Hey, good morning. Yes, it is. It is Monday, May 27th. And for most of you, you're enjoying the day off with it being Memorial Day, right? So I thought we'd take some time this morning during our weekday to give thanks to certain people and to remember certain people and a few stories along the way. So stay tuned. All right, so welcome back. My name is Eric, if you didn't already know it, and we do the weekday Monday through Friday, available on podcast as well. And I just did three back-to-back personal development videos, because I believe you need to be well-rounded. All right, you can't be all business all the time, or it makes you quirky. Yes, quirky. All right, so today is Memorial Day, and Memorial Day is not a day to have picnics or have a day off or this or that. I mean, it is, but the true meaning of Memorial Day. In Memorial Day, we honor and give thanks to the military for folks that lost their life. Now, it doesn't matter whether they lost their lives in combat to me or we no longer have them with us and they fought to protect my rights. So, with that, we just do a quick little bit of silence to remember them. And have a few stories with it. See, with my father is no longer with us. He passed away before he reached 40 years old. And he did his time in Vietnam, okay? And the man that left, the loving father, compared to the man that came back, was, it was like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. He had a drinking problem. Uh, Look, I don't care what kind of man or woman you are. If you see a lot of death and you are forced to take someone else's life because you to save your own, that's not going to affect you. Bullshit. I tell you right now. I don't know of anybody, unless they're a homicidal killer, that has no brain that says it's okay or not okay. They did that to protect our rights. The ones that we enjoy today of being able to have a barbecue or a day off. And that's one of the things that bothers me too, is the younger generation is also willing to give up so many rights to have the government do them for them. But yet our military is fighting to keep those rights for people like me that value those rights and are in the Constitution. But I don't only want to remember the ones that we've lost, but I also want to say thank you to you folks that are out there. Amos, I know you're one, for your service. It takes a lot to take a minimum, 4 years out of your life? And to fight for the basic rights for us. And a lot of times, wars that are going on outside of the U.S. is more to try to keep the wars from coming to the U.S. If we don't fight it there, we're going to fight it here eventually, right? That's the idea of thinking. And that's why we're looking at Ukraine, why we're looking at Afghanistan, Iraq. You know, a lot of people say, well, we shouldn't have been fighting those wars. That's fine. But a lot of your soldiers didn't decide, well, I'm not going there because I don't believe in that. No, they went and they fought. You know, go back to World War One, World War Two. You know, after the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor and all the deaths that occurred. One thing I know when it comes to America, if we can all get on the same page about anything, we're unstoppable. And those times are like 9/11 when the towers got hit. You had a lot of young men get very angry over what had taken place. And they joined the military. And they went over for retribution. You know, you're seeing similar right now. And I'll be honest with you, I'm pro-Israel. Okay? Israel's our friend, always has been our friend. The Jews have gone through horrible things in the past. With Hitler, with the Nazi camp, concentration camps, exterminating them because they were different. But the same thing happened to them on a scale that was much larger compared to the population. See, we lost a lot of people when the towers fell, and we lost a lot of people months and years after that tower fell from health issues with cancer and just on and on, right? Israel, they came across the border, or Hamas did, and killed and raped children, women, took hostages. You don't ever hear about the American hostages are being held, right? Why isn't that on the news? So, Israel has just as much right to protect its border after something that was terrible as we did with 9/11. I'm not saying we should supply them with bullets and everything else, but we need to stand behind them in solidarity. Well, let's get back to the stories on Memorial Day. And you can't only thank the men and women that were deployed, that enlisted, that served their time. As far as I'm concerned, you also have to thank their families for the sacrifices they made by not having that person around for that time period. And I can remember it was hard for the four of us kids with mom, you know, when dad was deployed. And we couldn't wait for the letter to arrive. It would be like once every couple of weeks. Kind of an update of what was going on over there. But dad was like me when I worked to the mines. Very, there's a lot of risk, all right? And a lot of dangers. And he was seeing the same things. But he didn't write about that. He just wrote about the good things. And whenever my wife would try to talk to me or my kids about working at the mines, I would always talk about the good things. I wouldn't talk about the dangers that I faced, or the near misses, or the bruises, you know, or other ones having broken bones from hanging large rocks, letting go and hitting them. Because I didn't want them to worry while I was away. And we worried anyways. because we saw the stuff on TV, right? For any of you guys that served in the military during the Vietnam War, you got a bad rap. I tell you, when it comes to hate, I'm not a hateful person. But when you had a bunch of these hippies calling my parents, my father, a baby killer and this and that don't fly. Even though most of them hippie guys finally gave it up and realized that smoking pot the rest of their life wasn't the ideal thing to getting ahead and having a family. And the ones that snuck off to Canada, Toronto, to avoid. The others that went to college to avoid. My father had enlisted in the military before the war because he wanted to become a medical person, and he and my mom met at a nursing college here in New York, and they hit it off, and next thing you know, there's four of us kids, right? Must be they really hit it off. But my father wanted more. He wanted more than just being a registered nurse. He couldn't see himself being just a registered nurse for a long time, where mom was a registered nurse too. You know, they both graduated together. So he ended up joining the military because the military offered a lot of options for, you know, going further in the medical field. And that's exactly what he wanted. And it was free if you were in the military. So he joined the military. And at the time when he joined, he was a registered nurse. And he decided to get into the anesthesiology field. That was his forte, all right? He went further than that, but that was his specialty, was anesthesiology. And he enjoyed it. He enjoyed working with other doctors and staff. So when he was deployed to Vietnam, he deployed with a medical unit, okay? And the horrific things that those guys saw and had to suck it up and save lives, I can't even imagine. But my father wasn't content in waiting for the choppers to arrive with the wounded to try to help. He was always that. I get a little bit of those genes from him of he wanted to do more. He thought he could save more lives, and he did, by going to the battlefield and prepping them there for the ride back, because they were losing people on the ride back because they weren't being prepped the way they needed to be. So going against base policy, he would hop on the chopper medevacs and ride with them. And he was a reel-to-reel buff, you know. Prior to being deployed, we had lived in Japan, and he bought all this special equipment, you know. And when he was on leave, he would buy this equipment, and he would mount it in the chopper and have it feed off from the cockpit, and you could hear the Phantom jets talking to the medevac to when they were coming in, hot and heavy. But there was one that where he went out with them, and he was the only one left. Every one of them got shot when they hit the ground, and he grabbed a 50 cal machine gun and started shooting, and they couldn't get back to him until the following day, but he survived. with I think a bullet wound to the leg. And that would make a person crazy, knowing that he knew everybody so well. And again, this was on reel to reel. You could listen to the fight going on. And he got his ass chewed out because he wasn't supposed to be there. But he wanted to help more people. The big thing with me is you have to remember your past so that you do not repeat it, right? We know with time we get, wisdom, right? And a lot of the younger people are trying to erase our history, erase the bad stuff. And you can't. You have to portray it the way it was, the way it is, and not all nice and fluffy duffy. And no. So yeah, probably a lot of you guys that listen to this channel that served can remember a lot of stories. We didn't hear the stories unless we stuck in and started listening to my dad's reel to reel, or if he'd have a bunch of his friends over and they get to drinking, and that's when the stories would come out. We listened from the bedroom of the stories. Other than that, he didn't talk about it. Oh. Because he always felt like you can't relate. If you haven't been there, how can you relate? And he was right. I've got friends here locally that are customers, but they're friends. And one that served on the front line for a long time, if he hears a chopper coming, he drops to the ground and just starts shaking. Just the mere sound of a chopper coming. And we have a gas pipeline that runs right through our neck of the woods. And they check that gas pipeline every so often with their own chopper. But if he hears that, he just drops to the ground and just shakes. Some people can compartmentalize, put it away, and not deal with it. Where others, have tried to deal with it through drinking, drugs, what have you. Did you know that vets have the highest suicide rate? Mm-hmm. And back in World War I and II, and even Vietnam, they always kind of suck it up, buttercup, if you had mental health issues going on. A PTSD, it's trauma is trauma. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, you have a job to do, and that's what you're out to do, right? But I know for years, my dad, when he went to sleep at night, he slept with his pistol underneath the pillow. Always. And if he heard even the lightest sound, he was up, walking through the house with that pistol. Because that's how he was when he was in Nam and Hooch. He slept with a pistol underneath his pillow. So I'm going to start wrapping this up, but I'm going to end it with one of the better stories that we did get to hear about, and that was one of the villagers, because the villagers were being shot and killed, just like our military, right? But this one 8-year-old had been shot and it hit him in the head. And you have to understand that the medical team that were deployed there not only worked on fellow soldiers, but they also worked on the villagers, the native to the area, and an occasional even enemy to try to save lives. When they came in, it didn't matter. They were trying to save lives. And the prognosis for this child that they carried in was slim. But they went ahead and they did the procedure and removed the bullet. And they basically adopted this child to stay with their medical unit. And he did well. And I know that my father, to the day he died, he had on his neck that bullet with a hole drilled through it, and he made it into a necklace. You know, one of the hardest things for him, honestly, was coming back. It wasn't staying there. He thought he should stay there and help fight more and help more. So on that note, just take time today to say thank you to any vets that are out there, and remember the ones that aren't with us anymore. So on that note, we'll see you bright and early tomorrow morning, and thanks so much for watching as usual.